The great hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top, and the delegates from 1,000 different worlds sat in floating platforms, arranged in careful circles around the central speaking floor. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, designed to accommodate species that saw in every spectrum from deep infrared to hard ultraviolet. Ambassador Kethril of the Vessery Dominion stood at the center podium. His scaled face twisted into what passed for a smile among his people. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms that moved constantly as he spoke, and eyes that reflected light like polished stones. "The Orion sector has always belonged to the strong," he said, his translator converting his clicks and hisses into the common trade language. "The Vexari merely claim what nature intended us to have. The weak species there will serve us, as is proper. This is not cruelty. This is order." Murmurs ran through the assembly. Most of the elder species said nothing. They had seen the Vexari expand before, swallowing smaller civilizations like a great beast consuming prey. The Dominion was old and powerful, with warships that numbered in the hundreds of thousands and weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. No one wanted to challenge them. Not directly. In a small platform near the outer rings, where the newer species were placed, the human delegation sat quietly. There were only 5 of them, and their platform was modest compared to the grand structures of the elder races. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat at the front, her dark hair pulled back tight, her uniform simple and undecorated. She had been watching the Vexari speak for nearly an hour. Her face showed nothing. "The Assembly will note," Kethril continued, "that no formal objection has been raised. This matter is therefore considered settled. The Vesari Dominion thanks the Assembly for its wisdom." He began to step down from the podium. "The United Earth Coalition raises an objection." Every eye in the Great Hall turned toward the human platform. Elena Vasquez had stood, and her voice carried clearly through the acoustic systems designed for species far larger than her. Kethril stopped. He turned slowly, and his stone-like eyes fixed on the small human woman. "I'm sorry," he said, and his tone made clear he was not sorry at all. "I do not recognize the speaker." "Which species is this?" "Humanity," Elena said. "Earth, admitted to the Assembly 43 years ago." "Ah." Kethril made a gesture that his people used to show amusement. "The soft ones. The emotional ones. I have heard of your kind. You cry at sad stories and keep small animals in your homes for comfort. What possible objection could you have to matters of galactic importance?" Some of the elder species made sounds of amusement. The Veshans, who had sponsored humanity's admission, looked uncomfortable. Elena's expression did not change. "The Orion sector contains 17 developing civilizations," she said. "Most have not yet achieved faster than light travel. Under Assembly Charter 7, they are protected from conquest or exploitation until they can speak for themselves. The Vexari expansion violates this charter." "Charter 7 is a suggestion," Kethril said dismissively. "Not a law. We are suggesting you follow it." Now the hall went truly quiet. Even the eldest species, beings who had existed for millions of years, leaned forward slightly. No one spoke to the Vexari this way. Not if they wanted to continue existing. Kethril descended from the podium and approached the human platform. He stopped when his face was level with Elena's, using his height to tower over her. "Little human," he said softly, and his translators carried the words to every corner of the hall. "Your species has been among the stars for less than a century. Your fleet numbers fewer than 200 ships. Your people have never fought a war beyond your own small world. You are children playing at diplomacy. Do not make the mistake of thinking your words have weight here." Elena met his gaze without flinching. "We are offering to mediate," she said. Earth proposes sending a diplomatic convoy to the contested region to negotiate a peaceful solution that respects the rights of all species involved. Kethrol stared at her for a long moment. Then he made a sharp, barking sound that was his species' equivalent of laughter. Send your convoy, little human. Send your diplomats and your good intentions. The Vexari welcome all visitors to our new territories. He turned and walked away, still making that barking sound. This should be entertaining. 3 weeks later, 5 human ships entered the Orion sector. They were not warships, but diplomatic vessels, designed for comfort and communication rather than combat. Their shields were minimal, their weapons purely defensive. They broadcasted signals of peace in every known language. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the UEC Harmony, watching the stars drift past on the main view screen. Her aide, a young man named Thomas Chun, stood beside her. "We're receiving a response from the Vexari Patrol," he said. "They're acknowledging our diplomatic credentials. Good." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "Perhaps this will be easier than we thought. Ambassador, they're also requesting we proceed to coordinates they're transmitting. They say the regional commander wants to meet with us personally." Elena nodded. "Tell them we're honored to accept." The 5 ships changed course, moving toward the coordinates they had been given. Around them, space was quiet and empty, just stars and darkness stretching in every direction. Thomas frowned at his console. "Ambassador, I'm detecting additional ships. A lot of them." Before Elena could respond, the view screen filled with light. Vexari warships appeared from nowhere, dozens of them, their weapons already charging. They had been hiding behind a nearby asteroid field, their signatures masked. "All ships, raise shields," Elena commanded, but it was already too late. The first volley struck the Harmony's sister ship, the Tranquility, and tore it apart in a single blast. The second ship, the Serenity, tried to turn and run, but 3 Vexari cruisers caught it in a crossfire. It lasted perhaps 10 seconds longer. The Harmony shook as its shields took hit after hit. "We're losing power," Thomas shouted. "Engines are failing." Elena grabbed the communications console. "This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Coalition. We are a diplomatic mission under protection of the Galactic Assembly Charter. Cease fire immediately." The Vexari commander's face appeared on her screen. He was older than Kethrol, his scales darker and scarred from many battles. "I know exactly what you are, human," he said, "and my orders are clear. Your species has embarrassed the Dominion in front of the Assembly. This cannot be allowed." The third ship exploded. "Please," Elena said. "The crew of these ships are innocent. They came in peace. Your peace means nothing to us. Your lives mean nothing to us. Your entire species means nothing to us. But you will serve a purpose. You will be a message." The fourth ship was disabled, not destroyed. Elena watched on the screen as Vexari soldiers boarded it, dragging the human crew from their stations. "What purpose?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "To show the galaxy what happens when someone challenges the Vexari Dominion." The transmission cut. Moments later, the Harmony's bridge went dark as the engines died completely. Elena felt the ship shudder as Vexari soldiers burned through the outer hull. Thomas looked at her with fear in his eyes. "Ambassador, what do we do?" Elena stood straight. She adjusted her uniform. She took a deep breath. "We remember who we are," she said quietly. "We remember what we represent. And we do not give them the satisfaction of seeing us break." The doors exploded inward. Vexari soldiers poured onto the bridge, their weapons raised. Elena did not resist as they grabbed her arms and forced her to her knees. The last thing she saw before they covered her head was Thomas, struggling against his captors, shouting her name. The broadcast reached every corner of known space. The Vexari had arranged it carefully, ensuring maximum viewership. They wanted every species in the galaxy to see what happened to those who challenged them. The captured humans were displayed in a great arena on the Visari border world of Kethvareth. There were 47 of them, the survivors from the 2 ships that had been captured rather than destroyed. They were bound and forced to kneel before crowds of cheering Vexari citizens. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was at the front, her face bloody but her eyes clear. The Vexari broadcast showed everything. Every injury, every scream, every moment of suffering. It lasted for 3 days. On Earth, in homes and offices and military bases, people watched in silence. Families held each other. Amiras held each other. Soldiers stood at attention. Politicians gave no speeches. In the Galactic Assembly, the other species watched too. Some expressed sympathy. A few suggested sanctions. The Veshans formally condemned the Vexari's actions, but no one offered to help. After the broadcast ended. After the last human voice went silent, the assembly waited to see how humanity would respond. They expected tears. They expected angry speeches. They expected demands for intervention, for protection, for justice. Instead, something strange happened. The human delegation stood. All 5 of them rose from their seats without speaking. They gathered their materials, powered down their consoles, and walked toward the exit. The Veshan ambassador moved to intercept them. "Where are you going? We must discuss how to respond to this atrocity. The assembly can issue formal condemnation. We can apply diplomatic pre." The Veshan observation ship drifted in the darkness between stars, its engines powered down, its hull cold against the endless void. Commander Urashel stood at her viewing port, watching the distant blue marble that the humans called Earth. She had been sent by the Galactic Assembly to investigate. 3 months had passed since humanity had gone silent, and the elder species were growing nervous. Not worried, exactly. Humanity was too small and too young to worry about. But nervous. There was something unsettling about the quiet. "Commander," her second officer said, approaching with a data tablet. "We've completed our scan of the solar system, and their colonies are empty. All 17 outer settlements have been evacuated. The populations have been moved to Earth and the 3 lunar bases." Urashel's tendrils curled in confusion. They're consolidating? For what purpose? Unknown. But there's more. Their shipping lanes are completely dark. No trade vessels. No passenger transports. Nothing moving in or out of the system. What about their military fleet? The second officer hesitated. "That's the strange part, Commander. We can't find it." Urashel turned from the window. "What do you mean you can't find it? They had nearly 200 ships. They're not in any of the expected locations. Not at their bases, not on patrol routes, not anywhere we can detect. It's as if they've vanished. Ships don't vanish." Urashel looked back at the blue planet. "Something is wrong here. Take us closer. I want to see their surface." The observation ship moved carefully through the outer edges of the solar system, staying well outside human territory, but close enough for detailed scans. What they found made Urashel's blood run cold. Every orbital shipyard around Earth was running at full capacity. Not standard capacity. Full emergency capacity. Ships were being built in weeks that should have taken years. The metal and resources flowing from asteroid mines to construction platforms exceeded anything the Veshans had ever recorded from human industry. "They're building a fleet?" Urashel whispered. "That's not possible," her second officer said. "The resources alone would require strip mining half their asteroid belt. Look at the belt." The second officer looked. Then he looked again, unable to believe what the sensors showed. The asteroid belt was half empty. Where once there had been millions of rocky bodies drifting through space, now there were great gaps. Empty regions where massive mining operations had harvested everything down to pebbles. How long have they been doing this? The second officer asked. I don't know. Urshel felt something she had not felt in many years. Fear. But it looks like they started long before the attack. Maybe decades before. That's impossible. They would have needed to know this was coming. Urshel said nothing. She was thinking about human history, the data files she had studied when her people first sponsored their admission to the assembly. The humans had a word for this, preparation. They had another word too, one that had no direct translation in the Deshan language. Contingency. Take us to the surface, she ordered. I need to see what's happening down there. Earth was green and blue and beautiful, covered in oceans and forests and cities that stretched along coastlines and river valleys. From orbit, it looked peaceful. Up close, it looked like a world preparing for war. Urshel had been granted permission to land, though the human authorities had been reluctant. They escorted her shuttle to a military base on a continent they called Europe, where she was met by a colonel in a crisp uniform. Commander Urshel, the colonel said, offering his hand in a human gesture of greeting. I'm Colonel Marcus Webb. I've been assigned to answer your questions. I appreciate your cooperation. Urshel studied the base around her. Soldiers were drilling in formation. Vehicles were being loaded with equipment. In the distance, transport ships were launching every few minutes. Your world seems very busy. We're keeping ourselves occupied. Preparing for something? Colonel Webb's face remained neutral. The assembly sent you to observe. So observe. I'll show you what we're willing to share. He led her through the base, past training grounds where soldiers practiced with weapons and hand-to-hand combat. Urshel had seen military training before on dozens of worlds. This was different. The soldiers moved with a precision that seemed almost mechanical, but their eyes held something else entirely. Focus, determination, and underneath that, something dark and patient. Your soldiers seem very dedicated, Urshel said. They have reason to be. The broadcast? The torture of your diplomats? Colonel Webb stopped walking. He turned to face her, and for a moment, his neutral expression cracked. Something raw showed beneath it. The broadcast is playing on every military base on Earth, he said quietly. On a loop? 24 hours a day. Every soldier watches it as part of their training. Every pilot. Every commander. That seems cruel. To make them watch their own people suffer. Yes, the colonel's voice was soft. It is cruel. But we don't watch it to grieve. We watch it to remember. He started walking again, leading her toward a large hangar. Inside, rows of ground vehicles were being fitted with weapon systems that Urshel did not recognize. Your species has been among the stars for a very long time, the colonel said. Millions of years, if I understand correctly. In all that time, you've fought wars, defended yourselves, expanded and retreated and negotiated. Yes, how many of those wars were total? How many times did your species fight until one side was completely destroyed? Urshel considered the question. Never, I think. War is expensive, destructive. There is always a point where negotiation becomes preferable to continued fighting. That's very sensible. The colonel stopped beside one of the vehicles. Humanity has existed for perhaps 300,000 years. In that time, we have fought wars of complete destruction more times than we can count. We have wiped out entire civilizations, burned cities to ash, salted the earth so nothing would grow. We have committed genocide against our own species multiple times for reasons that seem insane even to us now. He looked at her, and his eyes were very cold. We are not sensible creatures, Commander. We learned to be civilized because we had to, because if we didn't, we would have destroyed ourselves completely. But civilization is a choice we make every single day. And when someone hurts us badly enough, when someone takes from us something precious enough, we can choose differently. Urashel felt her tendrils curling tighter. What are you trying to tell me, Colonel? I'm trying to tell you that the assembly made a mistake. You looked at us and saw a young species, emotional, soft. You thought our kindness was weakness. You thought our desire for peace meant we didn't know how to make war. He gestured around the hangar at the weapons and vehicles and soldiers. We know how to make war, Commander. Better than any species in this galaxy. We've had so much practice. That night, Urashel was taken to observe a ceremony. Colonel Webb called it a memorial service, thought it was held in a great open field outside the military base. Thousands of soldiers stood in perfect rows, their uniforms dark against the evening grass. At the front of the assembly, a stage had been erected. And on the stage stood 47 empty chairs, one for each human who had died in the broadcast. A woman in civilian clothes walked to a podium at the center of the stage. She was old, with gray hair and weathered skin, and she moved slowly, as if carrying a great weight. "That's Senator Margaret Okonkwo," Colonel Webb whispered. Ambassador Vasquez was her daughter. Urashel watched as the old woman reached the podium. She did not speak immediately. She simply stood there, looking out at the assembled soldiers, her face carved from stone. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but perfectly clear. My daughter believed in peace. She believed that if we showed the galaxy who we truly were, they would see our worth. She believed that kindness and patience and mercy were not weaknesses, but strengths. The old woman's voice did not waver. She was right, but she was also wrong, because she forgot something that our species has always known, something we have written in blood across the pages of our history. Mercy must be earned. Peace must be respected. And when someone chooses violence, when they take our offered hand and cut it off, we do not offer the other hand. She looked directly at Urashel, as if she knew exactly where the alien observer was standing. We make them wish they had never been born. A sound rose from the assembled soldiers. It was not a cheer. It was not a war cry. It was something deeper, something more primal. A low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from the earth itself. Urashel understood then. This was not grief. This was not anger. This was something her species had never truly experienced. This was a promise. The next morning, Urashel returned to her ship. She sat in her quarters for a long time, composing a message to the Galactic Assembly. She wrote and deleted and wrote again, trying to find the words to explain what she had seen. Finally, she settled on something simple. To all members of the Galactic Assembly. This is Commander Urashel of the Vishan Observation Corps. I have completed my investigation of human space and must deliver an urgent warning. She paused, thinking of the soldiers with their dark eyes. The half-empty asteroid belt. The shipyards burning with constant construction. The old woman's voice promising something terrible. Do not position any ships near Vexari territory. Do not attempt to mediate or intervene in any conflict between humanity and the Dominion. What is called the Vexari border world of Kefirth was a fortress. Its orbit was filled with defensive platforms and patrol ships. Its surface was covered in military bases and weapons installations. 3 million soldiers called it home, and they were among the most elite warriors in the Dominion. General Varathkal stood in his command center, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. In the 4 months since the human diplomats had been executed, nothing had changed. The humans had retreated to their little corner of space, and the galaxy had learned once again that the Vexari were not to be challenged. "Sir," one of his officers called out, We're detecting a ship entering the system. Identification? It appears to be human. A small diplomatic vessel, unarmed. They're broadcasting on open channels. Vorathkal's scale blips pulled back in what passed for a smile. They've come back for more. How delightful. Prepare capture teams. We can make another broadcast. Sir, they're transmitting a message. Directed to you specifically. Put it through. The screen flickered and a human face appeared. It was a woman, dark-skinned and gray-haired, wearing a simple military uniform. Vorathkal did not recognize her, but something about her face seemed familiar. I am Fleet Admiral Margaret Okonkwo of the United Earth Coalition, she said. Her voice was flat and emotionless. You do not know me, but you knew my daughter. You killed her. You made her suffer. You broadcast her death for entertainment. Vorathkal leaned forward, suddenly interested. The ambassador's mother. How touching. Have you come to beg for her body? No. The Admiral's expression did not change. I have come to deliver a message. By all means, speak. You have committed acts of war against the United Earth Coalition. You were given the opportunity for peace. You chose violence. You chose torture. You chose to make a spectacle of our pain. Yes, Vorathkal spread all four of his arms wide. And we would do it again. Your species is weak. Your pain amuses us. I understand. The Admiral nodded slightly. Then you have made your choice. And now we will make ours. She reached forward and touched something outside the frame of the camera. You have approximately 30 seconds to look at your sensors. I suggest you use that time wisely. The transmission ended. Vorathkal laughed. A harsh barking sound had echoed through the command center. Threats from a single unarmed ship. Pathetic. Prepare to... Sir. The sensor officer's voice cracked with sudden terror. Sir, you need to see this. Vorathkal turned to the tactical display. For a moment, he did not understand what he was seeing. The display was filled with red dots, so many that they blurred together into solid masses. What is this? A sensor malfunction? No, sir. The officer was trembling. Those are ships. Human ships. They're coming out of faster-than-light travel all around us. How many? The officer did not answer. He just stared at the display, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Vorathkal pushed him aside and looked at the numbers himself. Then he looked again, certain he was misreading them. 4,872 vessels, ranging from small attack craft to massive capital ships, larger than anything the Vexari had ever built. They were emerging from faster-than-light travel in a perfect sphere around Kethfereth, surrounding the planet completely. That's impossible, Vorathkal whispered. They only had 200 ships. Sir, they're locking weapons. All of them. On our orbital platforms. The general stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. In all his years of service, in all the wars he had fought, he had never seen anything like this. The humans had not just built a fleet. They had built an armada. The first volley came before he could issue any orders. From the bridge of the flagship UEC Retribution, Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle unfold. It was not really a battle. Battles implied a contest between roughly equal forces. This was something else entirely. The Vexari orbital defenses lasted approximately 4 minutes. The defensive platforms, each one capable of destroying a dozen normal warships, were overwhelmed by concentrated fire from hundreds of vessels simultaneously. They burst like soap bubbles, their debris raining down toward the planet below. The patrol ships tried to form a defensive line. They were trained soldiers, professionals who had fought in dozens of campaigns. They held their positions with admirable courage. They died just the same. Admiral, Captain Chen reported from the tactical station. All orbital resistance has been eliminated. Ground forces are reporting readiness for deployment. Begin the landing. Yes, ma'am. All ships, this is tactical command. Commence ground assault. Standard doctrine. Across the human fleet, landing craft began to descend toward the planet's surface. They fell like rain, thousands of them, carrying soldiers and vehicles and equipment. The Veshari ground defenses opened fire, but there were too many targets. For every craft that was shot down, 100 more made it through. Admiral Okonkwo turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to the surface. All frequencies. Channel open, ma'am. Attention all Vexari military personnel. This is Fleet Admiral Margaret Okonkwo. Your orbital defenses have been destroyed. Your communications with the Dominion have been cut. Reinforcements will not be coming. She paused, letting the words sink in. You have 1 hour to surrender. Any military installation that surrenders will be treated according to the laws of war. Prisoners will be fed, sheltered, and eventually returned to the Dominion. Any installation that continues to resist will be destroyed without mercy. She cut the transmission and turned to the tactical display. The ground assault was proceeding exactly as planned. Human forces were landing at strategic points around the planet, establishing beachheads and advancing toward military targets. Ma'am, Captain Chun said quietly, some of the installations are surrendering. How many? About 30%. Admiral Okonkwo nodded. That was roughly what they had expected. And the others? Still fighting. Then destroy them. The battle for Kethvroth lasted 9 hours. By the end, every Veshari military installation that had refused to surrender was a smoking crater. Every warship was debris. Every defensive platform was gone. But something strange happened during those 9 hours. Something that would change the way the galaxy saw humanity forever. Private. First Class James Thornton was among the first wave of soldiers to hit the ground. His unit's objective was a military communications hub on the outskirts of a civilian city. They expected heavy resistance. What they found instead was chaos. The Vexari soldiers had fled, retreating toward the inner defensive lines. But they had left the civilian population behind. Thousands of Veshari non-combatants, many of them children, were huddled in their homes, terrified of the invading aliens. Sir, Thornton called to his lieutenant. What do we do about the civilians? Lieutenant Sarah Okafor surveyed the scene. Her orders were clear. Military targets only. Civilians were not to be harmed. Establish a perimeter, she ordered. Medical teams, start setting up stations. Anyone who's injured, we treat. Anyone who's hungry, we feed. Ma'am. One of the soldiers sounded confused. These are Veshari. They killed our people. These are civilians. They didn't kill anyone. Okafor's voice was firm. We're not here to slaughter innocents. We're here to defeat a military force that committed war crimes. There's a difference. Within an hour, human soldiers were providing medical care to Vexari wounded. They set up food distribution points. They brought blankets and clean water. They spoke softly to frightened children, using translation devices to say simple things like, "You are safe," and "We will not hurt you." The Vexari civilians were confused at first. They had been told that humans were savages, barely sentient beasts who would murder and eat anyone they captured. Instead, they found soldiers who checked on their injuries, who played with their children, who stood guard against the chaos with weapons pointed outward, not inward. And while this was happening, human bombers flew overhead, turning Vexari military bases into craters. The contrast was stark and intentional. General Varavkol survived the initial assault. He retreated to an underground bunker with a handful of his officers, watching the destruction of his command on flickering screens. How is this possible? He kept asking. Where did they get these forces? Where did they get these weapons? No one could answer him. The humans had appeared from nowhere with a fleet that rivaled the entire Vexari Dominion. Their weapons were advanced, their tactics flawless, their soldiers disciplined beyond anything he had ever seen. "Sir," one of his officers said, "we're receiving reports from the civilian zones." "What about them?" "The humans are. They're not harming the civilians. They're helping them, providing food and medical care." Vorathkol stared at the officer. "That makes no sense. We tortured their people. We murdered their ambassador. Why would they show mercy?" "I don't know, sir." The general sat in silence, trying to understand. This was not how war worked. This was not how the Vexari made war, and it was not how any species in the galaxy made war. When you defeated an enemy, you punished them. You made them suffer. You showed them the cost of resistance. The humans were doing something different. They were showing the Vexari people that their military had failed them, that their government. The war lasted 18 months. It was not a war in the way the galaxy usually understood the word. It was something else entirely, something that would be studied and debated for centuries after it ended. The humans called it Long March. After the fall of Kethvorath, the Vexari Dominion mobilized everything it had. Their full military strength numbered nearly 2 million ships, spread across 300 star systems. They had been the dominant power in their region of space for 10,000 years. And they had never faced a serious challenge. They faced one now. The human fleet advanced like a wave, unstoppable and relentless. They moved from system to system, always following the same pattern. Military targets were destroyed utterly. Civilian populations were protected absolutely. Every world that fell received the same treatment: food, medicine, shelter, safety. And then the fleet moved on to the next target. In the first month, the humans took 12 border systems. In the second month, they took 20 more. By the 6th month, the Vexari had lost nearly a third of their territory, and they were growing desperate. "We must escalate," declared Dominion Commander Vethrall, speaking to the Vexari High Council. "The humans follow rules. They protect civilians. This is weakness we can exploit." "How?" asked one of the council members. "By taking actions they cannot ignore. By forcing them to choose between their rules and their survival." The council debated. Some argued that escalation would only make things worse. Others pointed out that doing nothing was clearly not working. In the end, desperation won. The Vexari began taking hostages. The first incident occurred on the human colony world of New Brisbane. A Vexari strike force bypassed the main battle lines and hit the agricultural settlement with no warning. They killed the small defensive garrison and gathered the civilian population in the main square. Then they broadcast a message to the approaching human fleet: "You will withdraw from Vexari space." Immediately, the Vexari commander said, "Or we will execute these civilians. 100 per hour until you comply." Fleet Admiral Okonkwo received the message aboard the Retribution. She watched it in silence, her face expressionless. Then she turned to her communications officer. "Get me the colony's coordinates and prepare a strike force." "Ma'am, if we attack, they'll kill the hostages." "I know." The Admiral's voice was very quiet. "Get me the coordinates." The strike force arrived at New Brisbane 4 hours later. In that time, the Vexari had executed 300 civilians, broadcasting each death across all channels. The human ships did not negotiate. They did not demand. They simply attacked. The battle was over in 20 minutes. Every Vexari soldier was killed. The human Marines moved through the settlement afterward, recovering bodies and treating survivors. Admiral Okonkwo visited the colony personally. She walked among the graves that were being dug, stopping at each one to read the name. When she reached the end of the row, she turned to the cameras that were recording everything. To the Vexari Dominion. You have killed 300 of our civilians. You have murdered innocents to try to break our will. Here is our answer. She gestured at the graves. We will mourn our dead. We will remember their names. And then we will keep coming. You cannot take enough hostages to stop us. You cannot commit enough atrocities to make us surrender. Every crime you commit, we will record. Every victim will be remembered. And when this is over, every one of your leaders will answer for what they have done. The Vexari tried again and again and again. Each time, the result was the same. The humans mourned their dead and kept advancing. They did not hesitate. They did not slow down. They did not negotiate. And with each attack on civilians, the human forces became more ruthless in their destruction of military targets. The Vexari soldiers began to notice. When they fought by the rules of war, the humans took prisoners and treated them well. When they targeted civilians, the humans showed no mercy whatsoever. It was a message, delivered in blood and fire. Play fair, and you will be treated fairly. Choose brutality, and you will receive it in return. In the 14th month of the war, the Vexari made their most desperate move. They had developed a biological weapon, a plague specifically engineered to attack human biology. They released it on the human agricultural world of Harvest Prime, spreading it through the atmosphere until every living human on the planet was infected. 20 million people died over the course of 3 weeks. Many of them were children. The galaxy watched in horror. Even species that had stayed neutral in the conflict expressed condemnation. The use of biological weapons was considered forbidden by almost every civilization in known space. The humans said nothing. For 3 days after the last death on Harvest Prime, humanity went silent again. No communications. No movements. Just silence. Then they acted. The Vexari said, operated from an orbital station above their homeworld. It was the political heart of the Dominion, where the most powerful leaders lived and worked. It was heavily defended, protected by the largest concentration of military force in Vexari space. The human fleet arrived without warning. They did not engage the defensive fleet. They simply flew past it, taking heavy casualties, until a small group of ships reached the Senate station. The ships did not fire weapons. They attached themselves to the station's hull and began cutting through. Vexari soldiers tried to stop them, but the human marines were unstoppable, pushing forward with a fury that seemed almost inhuman. Within 2 hours, the humans controlled the life support systems of the station. They did not destroy them. Instead, they reduced them, slowly. Carefully, the oxygen levels began to drop. The temperature began to fall. The Vexari senators, the most powerful leaders of the Dominion, began to suffocate. And while this was happening, the humans broadcast everything. They showed the senators gasping for air, clutching at their throats, begging for mercy. They played recordings of the children of Harvest Prime alongside the suffering of the Vexari leaders. You chose this, Admiral Okonkwo's voice said over the broadcast. You chose biological weapons. You chose to kill our children. Now you will know what it feels like to die slowly, knowing help will not come. The broadcast lasted 6 hours. By the end, every senator was dead. The galaxy had seen many things in its long history. It had seen wars of conquest and wars of survival. It had seen atrocities and heroism. But it had never seen anything quite like this. The humans were not random in their violence. They were not savage. They were something far more terrifying. They were precise. Every escalation by the Vexari was met with a proportional response, and then one step further. Every crime was answered with punishment. The humans kept perfect records, documented everything, and delivered justice with mechanical efficiency. They don't fight like any species we've encountered, observed the Moravian scholar who studied the conflict. They don't seek territory for its own sake. They don't seek resources. They seek balance. They have an almost pathological need for justice, for cause and effect to match. That doesn't sound so frightening, said a young Descent student, doesn't it? The Moravian's ancient eyes were grave. Consider what it means. If you treat them fairly, they treat you fairly. If you show them kindness, they show kindness in return. But if you hurt them, they hurt you back. Exactly as much, and then a little more. What's the extra for? Interest, the Moravian said quietly. To make sure you never do it again. The other species began to understand. The humans were not monsters. They were mirrors. Whatever you showed them, they reflected back. If you offered peace, you received peace. If you offered violence, you received violence, refined and perfected by a species that had spent 300,000 years practicing it on themselves. The Vexari had looked at humanity and seen weakness. They had seen kindness and called it softness. They had seen restraint and called it cowardice. They had not understood that humanity's restraint was a choice, that the kindness was a gift, offered freely, but not without conditions. That beneath the soft exterior was something old and dark and patient, something that had clawed its way up from the mud of a violent world through millions of years of struggle. Now they understood. Now everyone understood. The humans were not weak. They had simply chosen to be gentle. And when that choice was taken from them, when they were forced to show what lay beneath, the galaxy trembled at what it saw. By the 18th month, the human fleet had reached the Vexari homeworld. The Dominion's military was shattered, reduced from 2 million ships to less than 50,000. Their leadership was dead or in hiding. Their population was terrified, having watched the slow destruction of everything they had built. The human fleet surrounded the planet and waited. One day passed, then 2, then 3. Finally, a transmission came from the surface. A Vexari female, her scales pale with fear, appeared on the screen. This is Acting Chancellor Yethanur of the Vexari Dominion. We wish to discuss terms of surrender. Admiral Okonkwo appeared on the screen. Her hair had gone completely white over the past 18 months. Her face was lined with exhaustion and something else, something that looked almost like regret. There will be no terms, she said. Only conditions. What conditions? Complete and unconditional surrender of all military forces. Immediate arrest of all leaders responsible for the attack on our diplomatic convoy and subsequent war crimes. Full access to your worlds for humanitarian inspection. 1 year after the war ended, the Galactic Assembly convened a special session. Every species was invited, from the oldest to the youngest, from the most powerful to the most humble. Even the Vexari were allowed to attend, though they came now as a diminished people. Their empire reduced to a handful of core worlds. The topic of the session was humanity. More specifically, the topic was what to do about humanity. The Great Hall was silent as the delegates took their positions. The human delegation sat in their usual spot near the outer rings, though no one suggested moving them anymore. Their platform was the same modest size it had always been, but the space around it was empty. Other species had quietly repositioned themselves, leaving a gap between their platforms and the humans. Fleet Admiral Margaret Okonkwo stood at the head of the human delegation. She had resigned her commission after the war, returning to civilian life. But when the assembly requested a human representative, she had been the obvious choice. The Dishan ambassador rose to speak first. We are gathered to address a matter of great importance to the future of this assembly, she said. The recent conflict between humanity and the Vexari Dominion has raised questions about the nature of human civilization and its place among the stars. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Let me be direct. What we witnessed over the past 2 years has frightened us. All of us. We invited humanity into this assembly, believing them to be a young, peaceful species. We sponsored their admission because we saw in them the potential for friendship and cooperation. What we saw in this war was something very different. Murmurs ran through the assembly. Some delegates nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable. We saw a species capable of building a secret war fleet while smiling and talking of peace. We saw tactics of a brutality that even the Vetzari, who pride themselves on their ruthlessness, could not match. We saw proportional retaliation taken to an almost mathematical precision. She looked directly at Admiral Okonkwo. We saw something that terrified us. The Admiral remained silent, her expression unreadable. The question before this assembly is simple. How do we proceed? Some have suggested restrictions on human military activity. Others have proposed closer monitoring of human worlds. Still others have suggested that humanity should be expelled from the assembly entirely. A voice rose from the Veksari delegation. It was Acting Chancellor Yethener, now confirmed as the official leader of what remained of her people. The Veksari oppose expulsion, she said, and the assembly went quiet with surprise. We have more reason than anyone to fear humanity. They destroyed our fleet. They dismantled our empire. They killed our leaders and broadcast their deaths for the galaxy to see. She stood, and her voice grew stronger. But they also protected our civilians when they did not have to. They provided food and medicine to people who had cheered for human deaths. When the war ended, they did not enslave us or exterminate us. They held trials. They punished the guilty and spared the innocent. They treated us better than we treated them, and we gave them no reason to do so. She turned to face the human delegation. The Veksari started this war with cruelty and arrogance. We paid a terrible price for our mistake. But I will not stand here and call the species that showed my people mercy worse than we are. That would be hypocrisy, beyond even what we deserve. The assembly fell silent again. No one had expected the Veksari to defend humanity. Finally, Admiral Okonkwo rose to speak. She moved slowly to the central podium, the same spot where the Veksari ambassador had mocked humanity's offer of peace 2 years before. Members of the assembly, she said, I understand your fear. If I were in your position, watching from the outside, I would be afraid too. She touched a control on the podium, and images began to appear in the air above her. Images of Earth, not the green and blue planet of today, but older images, darker ones. This is human history, she said. This is what we are. The images showed cities in flames, soldiers in trenches, mushroom clouds rising over ruined landscapes, mass graves and death camps, children starving while others feasted. For 300,000 years, we have killed each other. We have committed every atrocity you can imagine, and many you cannot. We have developed weapons capable of destroying our entire world, and we have come close to using them. We are not a peaceful species. We have never been a peaceful species. The images changed. They showed something different now. People rebuilding after disasters. Enemies shaking hands. Strangers helping strangers. Children of different races playing together. But we are also this. We are capable of kindness and sacrifice. We build hospitals and schools. We risk our lives for strangers. We forgive those who have wronged us and try to create something better. We are not one thing or the other. We are both, always, every moment of every day. She looked around the great hall, meeting the eyes of delegates from 100 different species. You asked why we built a secret fleet. I will tell you, not because we planned to conquer anyone, not because we wanted war. We built it because we knew from our own history that kindness alone is not enough. That there are beings in this universe who will see gentleness as weakness and try to exploit it. We hoped we would never have to use what we built. But we prepared anyway, because we have learned that hope is not a strategy. She took a deep breath. You are right to fear us. Any species that truly understands what humans are capable of should be afraid. But I want you to understand something else. Something that matters more than our capacity for violence. She pointed to the Vesheri delegation. We could have destroyed them completely. We had the power. After what they did to us, many of our people wanted it. The calls for vengeance were loud and passionate. We could have salted their worlds and ended their species forever. Her voice softened. We chose not to. Not because we couldn't. Not because anyone stopped us. We chose mercy because that is who we want to be. Every single day, we make that choice. To be kind when cruelty would be easier. To be patient when anger would feel better. To build rather than destroy. She looked at the Veshan ambassador. You said you saw something in that war that terrified you. I hope you also saw something that gave you hope. Because what we showed the galaxy wasn't just our capacity for destruction. It was our capacity for restraint. For justice instead of revenge. For protection of the innocent even when it cost us. She stepped back from the podium. You can fear us. You can watch us. You can keep your distance. I won't blame you. But know this. Humanity does not want war. We do not want conquest. We want to explore the stars, to learn from older civilizations, to share what we have and discover what we don't know. We want to be good neighbors and faithful friends. Her eyes grew cold. But if anyone, ever, threatens our people again, if anyone chooses to see our kindness as weakness and our restraint as cowardice, they will learn the same lesson the Vexari learned. We are not weak. We are not soft. We are not harmless. We have simply chosen to be peaceful. And we can choose differently, if we must. She returned to her delegation's platform and sat down. The assembly debated for 3 days. In the end, they voted not to expel humanity or restrict their military. Instead, they created a new category, one that had never existed before. Humanity was designated a protectorate species, not because they needed protection, but because others might need protection from them. Human military movements would be monitored. Human conflicts would be carefully observed. And in return, humanity would be given a permanent seat on the Assembly's Security Council, with full voting rights on matters of galactic defense. It was a compromise. Neither side was entirely happy. But it was fair, and it was honest, and it acknowledged the reality of what humanity had become. 10 years later, a young alien child walked through a museum on a neutral world. She was small and curious, with bright eyes that took in everything around her. Her parent walked beside her, answering her endless questions. They came to a display about the human Vexari War. Images showed the destruction and the aftermath. Statistics listed the dead. Videos played of the reconstruction efforts of human and Vexari working together to rebuild what had been destroyed. Parent, the child asked, why does everyone go quiet when humans enter a room? The parent considered the question carefully. Because they are afraid, she said finally. But humans are nice. The human who lives next door gave me candy. Yes, they can be very nice. Kinder than almost any species I have ever known. Then, why are people afraid? The parent knelt down to meet her child's eyes. Long ago, humans were monsters. They killed and destroyed and burned, even their own kind. They were terrible and violent beyond anything you can imagine. But something happened. They grew tired of being monsters. They looked at what they had done and they were ashamed. So they decided to stop. They just decided? Yes, they made rules and laws. They built schools and hospitals. They taught their children to be kind. And slowly, over many generations, they became something new. Something gentle and curious and good. The The child looked at the display, at the images of war and peace. So they're not monsters any.